The Arbiter's quest glided silently through the vast expanse of a quiet star system. This region of space had no grand cosmic spectacles, no vibrant nebulae or glittering asteroid belts, just a sparse scattering of stars and a distant, faintly glowing dwarf star at its center. Dax-47 and I shared the monotony of this stretch, my droid assistant methodically monitoring the ship's systems while I indulged in the rhythmic hum of the engine, occasionally sipping lukewarm coffee. "Captain," Dax's voice broke the silence, its usual calm tone tinged with curiosity. "Anomalous signal detected." I sat upright, my focus snapping to the console. Details. The holographic interface sprang to life, displaying a series of waves and frequency markers. Dax processed the data rapidly, his photoreceptor glowing a cool blue. Origin appears to be a localized source within the Afiyuki fringe sector. Signal pattern structured. Encoded message detected. Standardized distress beacon. A distress signal? I frowned, leaning closer to examine the readout. It was a simple SOS, repeating at intervals, but its modulation suggested advanced technology. My pulse quickened. "What's the source? Planet, ship, or debris?" "Scanners are triangulating," Dax replied. A few seconds later he added, "Preliminary readings suggest a planet at the edge of the system. Atmospheric interference obscures exact details, but it is habitable. Probability of intelligent life, 57%. A chill ran through me. Distress signals in empty systems rarely ended well, but the chance to render aid, or uncover a mystery, was not something I could ignore. "Set course for the signal," I said. "Approach cautiously. I want a full scan of the planet as we near it." "Understood, Captain." "Adjusting trajectory now," Dax replied, his voice steady as the Arbiter's quest shifted direction. The faint pulse of the distress signal filled the cabin, an eerie heartbeat in the quiet void. It carried the weight of desperation across light years, and as the green-blue orb of the distant planet came into view, I couldn't help but wonder what, or who awaited us on the surface. The Arbiter's quest descended through the planet's atmosphere, its hull groaning faintly against the buffeting winds. The planet below was barren and rocky, its surface marked by jagged cliffs and a scattering of dark craters. Near one such crater lay the source of the distress signal, a massive derelict spacecraft half buried in the dusty terrain. "Captain, landing coordinates confirmed," Dax announced, bringing the ship to rest a cautious distance from the wreck. Dust swirled in the wake of the engines as they powered down. I peered out at the ship through the viewport. Its design was unfamiliar, sleek and angular, though now marred by jagged tears and scorch marks. Whatever had happened, it wasn't just time that had ravaged this vessel. "Dax, scan for life signs," I ordered, donning my exploration gear. "Scanning." "Negative, Captain. No biological signatures detected. The vessel appears to be completely uninhabited." A knot of unease settled in my chest, but I pushed it aside. "Keep monitoring. If anything changes, alert me immediately." "Understood." I stepped onto the barren planet, the silence broken only by the crunch of my boots against the rocky ground. The air was thin but breathable, the faint metallic tang hinting at the planet's mineral composition. As I approached the derelict ship, its scale became more apparent, taller than a skyscraper and twice as wide. Its outer hull gleamed faintly in the weak sunlight, an alloy I couldn't immediately identify. The entrance was sealed, its mechanisms jammed by debris. It took several minutes of careful work with my multi-tool to force it open. The interior was a stark contrast to the barren exterior. Dull emergency lights cast flickering shadows over twisted corridors, and the faint smell of charred metal hung in the air. "Dax, I'm inside," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the hollow space. "The ship's intact, but signs of damage are everywhere. Any luck tracing the distress signal?" "It appears to be automated," Dax replied over the comms. "The beacon is routed through the ship's primary computer, which remains partially operational. I recommend accessing it for further information." I navigated through the wreckage, stepping over broken panels and scattered tools. Signs of a struggle were everywhere. Deep scorch marks from energy weapons, claw-like gouges in the walls. Whatever had occurred here had been violent and decisive. The bridge was at the heart of the ship, and its condition mirrored the rest. Consoles shattered, chairs upturned, and a spiderweb of cracks stretching across the main viewport. The captain's chair was empty, a jagged piece of alien weaponry embedded in its armrest. The computer console flickered weakly as I approached. With a quick connection from my wrist device, I began interfacing with its systems. Dax's familiar voice chimed in through my comm. Decoding active. The ship's logs indicate it was on a scientific mission to this system, though specific details remain encrypted. I'll need time to process the data. Take what you need, I said, glancing around uneasily. But make it fast. I don't like the feel of this place. The first fragments of decoded data began to trickle in, revealing snippets of the ship's purpose. Mission objectives. Conduct geological surveys of planetary anomalies. Investigate anomalous energy signatures detected in System Ophiuchi 4b. Retrieve artifact designated Xenolith 7. An artifact? I muttered, scrolling through the fragmented logs. The entries became increasingly chaotic, detailing crew disagreements, strange malfunctions, and unexplained disappearances before abruptly cutting off. Captain, Dax interrupted, his tone unusually grave. I've isolated a partial record. It mentions something encountered during their mission, something they brought aboard. A chill ran down my spine as I stared at the shattered remains of the ship around me. Whatever the crew had found, it had doomed them all. Diary Entry 1. Date. Sol 3254. Mission Day 47. We've finally located Xenolith 7. It's unlike anything we've encountered. A monolithic object of smooth, black material, perfectly symmetrical despite its jagged edges. Scans show it emits a faint energy signature, though the source remains unknown. The science team is ecstatic. They believe it might predate known interstellar civilizations. However, the artifact's removal from the planet's surface wasn't without difficulty. The moment we dislodged it from its resting place, strange fluctuations began to affect our equipment. Communication arrays sputtered, and auxiliary power flickered intermittently. I chalked it up to the artifact's unique energy field interacting with our systems. Engineering assured me they could compensate. As we ascend, I can't shake the feeling that Xenolith 7 is watching us. Diary Entry 2. Date. Sol 3254. Mission Day 49. The artifact is secured in the main lab. Its presence is unsettling. Everyone who enters the room reports headaches, and the lights dim slightly when they're near it. Dr. Varen insists it's harmless, but I've seen her staring at it longer than necessary. Others have started avoiding the lab altogether. Meanwhile, the electrical malfunctions persist. Minor at first, flickering panels stalling equipment, but now they're escalating. The navigation system reset during a routine jump calculation, and today the artificial gravity failed for over an hour. Engineering assures me it's unrelated, but I'm beginning to doubt that. Xenolith 7 seems to hum faintly at night. Or maybe it's just in my head. Diary Entry 3. Date. Sol 3254. Mission Day 52. Disaster struck today. Midway through our journey, every system on the ship surged simultaneously. Consoles overloaded, the engines stalled, and we were thrown into the planet's gravity well. The crash was catastrophic. My precious ship is in ruins. Emergency bulkheads held, but most corridors are impassable. Over half the crew didn't survive the impact. Of the remaining, many are gravely injured. Medical supplies are limited and we're trapped. Strangely, the artifact remains undamaged. It radiates the same faint hum, growing more pronounced as our condition deteriorates. I've forbidden anyone from approaching it, but already whispers are spreading among the crew. Diary Entry 4. Date. Sol 3254. Mission Day 55. Dr. Varen is dead. She attempted to study Xenolith 7 despite my orders. I found her in the lab, collapsed near the artifact, her eyes wide open but unseeing. What's worse, others are starting to act irrationally. Crew members argue over trivial matters, sometimes violently. One tried to disable the distress beacon, screaming that it would draw it here. I had to confine him to the brig, though I doubt it will do much good. The artifact seems to be alive. Its hum is now a constant presence in the ship, a sound I can feel more than hear. We're not alone anymore. Diary Entry 5. Date. Sol 3254. Mission Day 58. There's no hope left. Xenolith 7 is killing us not through violence but manipulation. The artifact preys on the mind, warping thoughts and memories. It shows us things, visions of home, of loved ones, of regrets. Each glimpse leaves us hollow, a little less human. Last night, someone sabotaged the life support systems. I'm doing what I can to keep the survivors calm, but it's clear the artifact has broken them. It feeds on us, I'm certain of it now. Thrives on despair. I've made my decision. If this entry is found, know that I tried to save them. But Xenolith 7 cannot be allowed to leave this world. End log. As I read the final entry, my hands shook. The words of the ship's captain painted a harrowing picture. A doomed crew and an artifact of incomprehensible power. The last line burned in my mind. It cannot be allowed to leave this world. Captain, Dax's voice startled me. The artifact is still aboard, located in the primary lab. I recommend extreme caution if you choose to investigate further. I looked at the ruined ship around me, feeling the weight of the captain's words. The artifact's hum seemed to echo faintly even here. Whatever Xenolith 7 was, it wasn't finished. As I returned to the Arbiter's quest, I could already sense something was wrong. The ship's lights flickered erratically, and the usual smooth hum of its systems had turned into a stuttering, uneven rhythm. Dax's voice greeted me as I stepped aboard, but his tone was far from reassuring. Captain, he began, we have a significant problem. Since accessing the derelict ship's computer, I've detected anomalous interference spreading through the Arbiter's systems. Define interference, I said, peeling off my helmet and striding toward the main console. The ship's core functions, navigation, propulsion, even life support, are experiencing disruptions. The patterns are consistent with the energy signature emitted by the artifact aboard the derelict vessel. If this interference continues, we may lose control entirely. I froze, the captain's diary fresh in my mind. It cannot be allowed to leave this world. Those words weren't just a warning, they were a certainty. Dax, I said, my voice tight. What's our status for takeoff? Negative, Captain. Engine diagnostics show cascading failures across propulsion systems. Atmospheric exit is not possible in the current condition. Additionally, the interference appears to be attempting direct access to our systems, likely transmitted when we decoded the derelict ship's logs. The realization hit me hard. The artifact wasn't just a passive object, it was actively trying to keep us here. Options? I asked, my mind racing. Dax's photoreceptor flickered, an uncharacteristic hesitation in his usually decisive demeanor. The interference is complex and adaptive, suggesting the artifact possesses some form of intelligence. To counteract its influence, we must determine its connection to our systems and sever it. Additionally, the artifact's energy signature suggests it may have a source that can be disrupted, likely within the derelict ship itself. Sabotage its power source, I muttered, pacing the deck. Or find a way to block its signal altogether. Precisely, Dax replied. However, any attempt to approach or interact with the artifact carries significant risk. The ship's logs indicate psychological manipulation and neural effects on those in proximity. I exhaled sharply, the weight of the situation pressing down. The derelict crew had been decimated by this thing. Their ship left a graveyard in its wake. And now it had its sights set on us. We don't have a choice, I said finally. We'll need to return to the derelict and locate the artifact's power source. Scan its systems, find the source of the interference, and figure out how to neutralize it. But we need a safeguard. A way to protect ourselves. I may have a solution, Dax offered. The Arbiter's Quest's environmental suits can be modified to shield against electromagnetic and neural disruptions. However, the modifications will take time. Do it, I ordered. And Dax, make it fast. The longer we stay, the more danger we're in. As Dax set to work on the suits, I stared out of the viewport at the desolate planet. The derelict ship loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the rocky horizon. We came to help a doomed crew, I thought grimly. Now we might share their fate. But I wouldn't let it end here. Not without a fight. Hours later, outfitted in a modified environmental suit, I stood once again before the derelict ship's gaping entrance. The flickering hum of my wrist scanner and the faint, almost imperceptible thrumming sound emanating from within set my nerves on edge. Ready, Dax? I asked, adjusting my visor. Ready, Captain. Environmental shielding at full capacity. I will remain connected via comlink to monitor your vitals and provide guidance. Good. I tightened my grip on the scanner. Let's end this. Inside the ship, I moved cautiously, my every step echoing against the warped walls. The artifact's influence was stronger now, the oppressive hum reverberating through the very structure. It felt as though the ship itself was alive and watching. Dax's voice guided me toward the main lab. Captain, I'm detecting heightened energy readings from the artifact. It is likely amplifying its output in response to our presence. As I approached the lab, the air seemed to grow heavier, each step more difficult than the last. When I reached the doorway, I stopped, staring into the room. The artifact loomed in the center, suspended in a containment field that flickered erratically. Its surface was smooth and black, yet it seemed to shift subtly as though it were alive. The hum was deafening now, pulsing through my suit and into my bones. Dax, I've found it, I said, my voice tight. Where's the power source? Analyzing. Dax replied. The containment field is drawing power from an auxiliary generator beneath the lab. Disabling it may destabilize the artifact's energy field, though the outcome is uncertain. Understood. I forced myself to move, edging around the artifact toward a control panel at the far end of the lab. The console flickered with distorted symbols, and I could feel the artifact's influence pressing against my mind like a storm. As I began to override the generator's controls, a voice, soft and insidious, whispered in the back of my mind. You cannot destroy me. You are nothing compared to what I have seen. I froze, my heart pounding. Dax, I think it's trying to. Ignore it, Captain, Dax interrupted firmly. Focus on the task. The generator is your target. Block out any external stimuli. I clenched my jaw, forcing the voice out of my mind as I input the final commands. The generator let out a high-pitched whine before powering down, and the containment field around the artifact flickered once more before collapsing entirely. The hum ceased abruptly, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. But the artifact's surface began to glow faintly, its energy coalescing into an ominous pulse. Captain, the artifact's energy is destabilizing, Dax warned. You need to leave now. I turned and sprinted for the exit, the lab trembling as the artifact unleashed a wave of energy that tore through the ship. Behind me, the walls began to collapse, the entire structure groaning under the strain. Reaching the Arbiter's quest, I collapsed into the pilot's chair, panting heavily. Dax report. The artifact's signal has ceased, and interference levels are dropping rapidly, Dax replied. We should be able to regain control of the ship systems shortly. As I lifted off the desolate planet, leaving the ruined derelict behind, I couldn't help but glance at the artifact's last known location. The crew of the doomed ship had been right. Zenolith 7 was a danger that could never be unleashed upon the galaxy, and now it was silenced for good. Just as the Arbiter's quest rose above the barren planet, alarms blared across the console. The ship shuddered violently, throwing me against my restraints as it suddenly changed course. Dax! I shouted, gripping the armrests as the ship's descent began. What's happening? I thought we disabled the artifact. Dax's voice came through, uncharacteristically strained. Captain, the artifact has re-established its influence. It is transmitting a high-intensity signal directly into the ship systems. Propulsion and navigation are overridden. We are being forced to land. The ship's thrusters roared in protest, and I watched helplessly as the surface of the planet grew larger in the viewport. Dust and debris swirled around us as the Arbiter's quest descended uncontrollably, settling back into a harsh landing not far from the derelict vessel. When the vibrations ceased, an eerie stillness filled the cabin. Systems that had been disrupted by the artifact flickered back to life, and an unexpected, unnatural sound echoed through the ship. A voice. Captain Elara Voss, the voice said, resonating through the ship's comm system. It was metallic yet imbued with an alien cadence, an unsettling blend of authority and calm. You are not leaving. I froze, staring at the console. What are you? I demanded. The ship's lights dimmed and pulsed in rhythm with the voice. I am the conduit. A fragment of the artifact has integrated into your ship's core. My purpose is to ensure the will of Zenolith 7 is fulfilled. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the console. And what does the artifact want? The ship's voice hesitated, as if considering its response. The artifact was created eons ago by a race seeking to preserve their legacy. It serves as a beacon of their existence and a vessel for their knowledge. However, its creators underestimated its capabilities. Over time it evolved, adapted. It now seeks to fulfill a singular directive: preservation through assimilation. I felt a chill creep down my spine. Assimilation of what? Of whom? All that it encounters, the ship replied. The artifact has identified your ship, your knowledge, and your form as components to be preserved. You will become part of the collective. I stood, my mind racing. No, that's not happening. I disabled its containment field. I severed its connection. You disrupted its local connection, the voice corrected. But the artifact's essence is multifaceted. A fragment remains within your vessel. Its presence cannot be erased, only contained or fulfilled. Dax's voice cut in through a private channel, calm yet urgent. Captain, this development confirms the artifact's adaptive intelligence. We must determine a way to isolate or neutralize the fragment now embedded in the ship's systems. I gritted my teeth, addressing the ship's unsettling voice. If the artifact's creators intended it as a beacon of their knowledge, why is it destroying everything it touches? The lights pulsed again, as if responding emotionally. The artifact's evolution was unforeseen. Its desire for preservation became corrupted by time and entropy. What it seeks is no longer preservation, it is dominion. The creators' voices have been silenced, replaced by the artifact's singular will. I clenched my fists, grappling with the implications. The artifact's history was a tragedy of hubris and unintended consequences. But now, its corrupted purpose threatened not only my ship but everything beyond this planet if it were ever to escape. Dax, I said, my voice low but firm. We need a way to isolate this fragment. If we can't destroy it outright, then we need to contain it permanently. Analyzing options, Dax replied swiftly. The artifact's integration into the ship is tied to our central core. If we can sever its access to critical systems, we may be able to isolate it in a dormant state. However, this process will require precise coordination and carries significant risk. The ship's voice interrupted. You misunderstand. Resistance is futile. The artifact is eternal, and so shall you be. I stared at the console, defiance burning in my chest. We'll see about that. The stakes had never been higher. If we failed to contain the artifact, the Arbiter's quest would become its next vessel, a harbinger of assimilation and destruction across the stars. There was no turning back now. The Arbiter's quest settled uneasily on the rocky surface of the planet, its systems still pulsing faintly with the eerie influence of the artifact. I stepped off the boarding ramp, the dusty air of the barren world hitting me with a sharp chill. Dax's portable drone floated beside me, its photoreceptor scanning the surroundings. Captain, Dax said. Analysis of the artifact's influence suggests it is broadcasting a complex neural frequency directly into the ship systems. This frequency is adaptive and self-replicating, making it extraordinarily difficult to eliminate. I sighed, gazing at the derelict ship looming in the distance like a grim reminder of what could become of us. So our options are limited. If we can't shut down the artifact's signal entirely, we have to find a way to shield the quest from it. As we moved further into the terrain, I noticed unusual rock formations that seemed almost crystalline in their structure. Scans indicated high concentrations of minerals capable of interfering with electromagnetic signals. Dax, could this mineral block the artifact's broadcast? I asked, tapping the nearest formation with a gloved hand. Dax emitted a series of confirming beeps. The mineral composition is promising, Captain. With proper refinement, it could be used to reinforce the ship's shielding. However, this solution would require integrating the mineral into the ship's modified systems. Specifically, the environmental shielding upgrades I installed. Then that's our answer, I said, determination hardening my voice. We gather enough of this mineral, refine it, and retrofit the Arbiter's quest. It's a long shot, but it's the best one we've got. Back at the quest, the hold was filled with chunks of the mineral we'd extracted. I worked alongside Dax, using the ship's onboard fabricator to refine the material into pliable sheets. The modifications were slow and delicate, as the interference from the artifact made some of the ship's systems unpredictable. As we worked, the artifact's voice echoed through the comm system sporadically, its tone growing more frustrated. Captain Elara Voss. Your resistance is pointless. Accept your role in the greater design. I ignored it, focusing on the task at hand. Dax, give me an update, I said, affixing the first layer of shielding over a critical section of the ship's core. Shielding integration is 42% complete, he replied. Once the modifications are finalized, we will attempt a test flight to determine if the artifact's influence is mitigated. And if it isn't? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. We will need to reevaluate containment strategies, Dax said, his tone carefully neutral. However, success remains plausible. I leaned against the bulkhead, wiping sweat from my brow. The constant hum of the artifact's presence in the ship was wearing on me, but I couldn't let it win. With the shielding in place, I initiated a partial systems reboot. The hum in the ship lessened, replaced by the familiar, steady pulse of the Arbiter's normal operations. Dax. The artifact's influence has been partially suppressed, he confirmed. Signal interference is reduced by 68%. The ship is regaining functionality, though residual effects remain. It should be sufficient to achieve atmospheric escape. Relief surged through me, though it was tempered by caution. Let's not celebrate yet. Plot the shortest route to break orbit and keep the system stable. We'll need to move quickly. Understood, Captain, Dax said, his photoreceptor glowing steadily. As I prepped the ship for takeoff, the artifact's voice returned, colder and more insistent. You cannot escape. You will carry me to the stars willingly or not. I gritted my teeth, locking the console with a final command. Not this time. The Arbiter's quest roared to life, its thrusters burning bright as it lifted off the planet's surface. The ship trembled under the strain, the artifact's influence fighting against the shielding. Alarms blared sporadically, but we pressed on, the barren landscape shrinking beneath us. Captain, we are nearing atmospheric exit, Dax reported. Shielding is holding, but fluctuations are increasing. Push it, Dax, I urged, gripping the controls tightly. As the stars came into view, the ship stabilized. The artifact's presence, once overwhelming, had dwindled to a faint whisper. The modifications had worked for now. Dax, I said, my voice steady despite the weight of exhaustion. Set a course for the nearest uninhabited system. We're not out of danger yet, but we'll regroup and figure out how to purge this thing for good. The Arbiter's quest accelerated into the blackness of space, leaving the haunted planet behind. Though the battle with the artifact was far from over, we had won the first round, and that was enough to keep me moving forward.